Hello everybody, my name is Ethan Doan, and in this video, I'm going to be ranking my top 10 movies of 2019 halfway through 2020. During the coronavirus pandemic, I've had time to sit down and rewatch my favorite movies of 2019, and 2019 was a very good year for film, and there were so many good movies that came out. Big hitters like Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino came out to play this year, as well as smallers like Todd Phillips or Noah Baumbach that created masterpieces on their own as well. So without further ado, here are my honorable mentions. My honorable mentions include Jojo Rabbit, Little Woman, Joker, Avengers Endgame, Rocketman, Ad Astra, and The Farewell. So, here's number 10. Ford vs. Ferrari. Now, Matt Damon and Christian Bale star in this bromance story of the underdog Ford racing to beat Ferrari at 24 Hours of Le Mans. This is a true story about Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles as they fought to build the Ford GT40 in order to beat Ferrari in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now, what this movie does right, they does really right. The sound design and the cinematography, especially during the racing scenes, is impeccable. Bone-shaking, the sounds, the shrieks that the cars make. Other than that, though, it's a rather standard bromance, and it's a very good story. My number 9 pick goes to 1917, starring George McKay and Dean Charles Chapman in their breakout roles. 1917 takes a step back on its characters and the plot and focuses more on the atmosphere and the horrors of World War I. What this movie does perfectly is definitely the cinematography, the one-take premise. Roger Deakins is a veteran in the industry, and he demonstrates that. While this movie does take a step back in the plot, which is just a simple A to B, and the characters have very little fleshed-out character moments, the atmosphere and the scenery of this movie and the immersiveness of this movie makes it a worthwhile watch. For my number 8 slot, I'll give this to Uncut Gems. It's directed by the Safdie brothers, who also directed Good Time, great movie. It stars Adam Sandler as a jeweler who is rather addicted to gambling and is always chasing that higher bet and that riskier gamble. What this movie gets right, for sure, is the anxiety and the tension. There's always something happening on the screen, and we always know that something is going wrong at some point in time. The amount of clutter in the dialogue, in the actions of all the characters is immaculate. And some people will criticize this movie for that, but I feel that it elevates the movie. This is the Safdie brothers. It's their trait. All actors bring out standout performances. Even Kevin Garnett is in this movie, and he does surprisingly well, so hope you guys give this a watch. My number 7 pick goes to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is directed by Quentin Tarantino, one of the best directors of our age, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio as a rather washed-up actor that made his fortune in 50s television, but now is struggling to find his fortune as well as his purpose in 60s Hollywood. He's accompanied by Brad Pitt, that plays his bro and his stunt double. What this movie gets right, for sure, is the humor. This is Tarantino's funniest film by far, and it's helped by the performances of Brad Pitt and DiCaprio. This is a very well shot film. The scenes of 60s Hollywood, the strip, the theaters, all the antique vintage buildings looks amazing. And the final scene is probably my second favorite scene of all of 2019. Some of the things I don't like about this movie that doesn't rank it a little bit higher on this list is for sure the meaning of the movie. It is a retelling of the tragic Sharon Tate story, but I don't see any further message behind it. And some may argue that it's slow at times. I think it's fine, but some may say that. Other than that, I think this is an amazing movie overall, but just missed the mark in comparison to these other 6 movies. My number 6 pick goes to Parasite. This is a story about how a poor family infiltrates a rich family one by one until they are fully integrated into their lives, much like a Parasite. Now, a lot of you are probably surprised that this is so low down compared to the amount of Oscars they won this year, and I'll tell you why. I think this movie gets a lot right. I think the cast is amazing. They play so well together. And the screenplay is amazing as well. The plot is played out perfectly. And the mood switch halfway through, the twist from a dark comedy to a thriller, is immaculate. What I think Parasite does best is the social commentary that Bong Joon-ho, the director, does on class and status. And this is reinforced by the imagery and symbolism throughout the whole movie. For example, the rock that is meant to bring fortune to the poor family, or the stairs that divide the rich and the poor being so low down and the rich being high up. Why this movie didn't go higher up on this list, I didn't find it as emotionally compelling. I didn't find myself replaying the movie in my head or wanting to come back for a second viewing after it. So, let's move on to our number 5 pick. Knives Out, directed by Rian Johnson, the greatest comeback story of all time after The Last Jedi. This movie is about a rich family whose very successful grandfather is found dead, and Benoit Blanc, played impeccably by Daniel Craig, is brought in to determine whether it was just a plain old suicide or there was foul play. It was a murder. What this movie gets right is for sure the amount of fun it is. This is the most popcorn flick of all in the whole list, and it manages to enthrall the audience while also giving a rather great social commentary on immigration. This movie is so well acted. The ensemble cast is amazing. It wouldn't be the same without them, much like Parasite. And this movie gets the plot twist perfect, going from a classic whodunit to a enthralling thriller. Number 4, The Irishman. We're getting into the big dogs now, guys. Starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, really superstars, and being directed by Martin Scorsese, arguably the greatest director of our time. It's about a World War II veteran who is inducted into the mafia life and begins conducting out acts for them, including painting houses and doing carpentry as well. Eventually, he gets involved with Jimmy Hoffa, who is one of the most influential, greatest leaders of his time. This is a 3.5-hour epic telling a story across decades, and yet it never feels slow. This film takes a contemplative look on life, on finality, on guilt, and it does this so well. It's my favorite aspect of the film. The acting is amazing. When you bring out big names like De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci, you can't expect anything less than what we get. And we got amazing performances. Al Pacino brings his usual fire. Robert De Niro bringing in one of the most subtle performances of his career. And Joe Pesci, in my opinion, has put out one of the best performances of the year, playing a subtle yet menacing and dangerous character that is much contrast to what we saw in Goodfellas at Casino, the rabid dog style. The editing is impeccable. Thelma Schumacher bringing the fire. One of the only things I thought this movie didn't get perfectly was the de-aging CGI that was used to tell the story of their young lives. It had no effect on me personally, but I could see how other people might find the CGI a little distracting. Also, this movie can seem a little bit long to people because 3.5 hours. I really suggest that you guys carve out time to watch this movie. It will really get you thinking about life in general. Number 3 goes to Marriage Story, starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, powerhouses of actors. This tells a story not of marriage, but of divorce, of how two once were lovers splitting apart, and the struggle and the pain that goes through divorce, and their love for each other, yet through divorce, yet through separation. Noah Baumbach, after the Meyerowitz Stories, which was a really good film, brings another family drama. One of my favorite parts about this movie was the editing. This movie cuts and it lingers for so well, and it is shot impeccably. It looks beautiful. The screenplay is amazing. It is moving, and it tells an amazing story that sticks with you. And once again, it gives you a commentary on divorce, but yet of love and caring, and so much more than just divorce. What is highlighted the most is how the relationship of these two characters are so bombarded when lawyers and courts get involved in their divorce. I thought this movie was impeccable. It told a great story, but these other two films I thought were just a little bit better. My number 2 pick is The Lighthouse. Robert Eggers brings the heat in his sophomore effort after The Witch, starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe in two of the greatest performances of the year. It tells a story of two lighthouse keepers who become stranded on an island, and slowly together they go insane. This movie is mind-blowing. First off, the cinematography, shot in black and white, 1.19:1 ratio. This capture shows such a claustrophobic feeling and essence, and yet manages to show such a beautiful scenery. The sound design is amazing. The constant blare of the horn, the foghorn, bass, the tremolo of the cello of the bass, constantly creating tension is great. The dialogue and the attention to detail in the dialect of the time period is very well done. And overall, what this movie does right is the uneasiness, the tension, and the craziness. We go insane with the characters. We see what they see. We see mermaids swimming. We see tentacles coming out of the lighthouse. The actors portray the insanity amazingly, and it all combines to create a feeling of unsettledness and uneasiness. The Lighthouse contains my favorite scene of the year. Are you fond of me lobster? The dialogue between Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson is so interesting and so captivating. You can't take your eyes off of the screen when they're performing. This is one of the greatest horror movies of the decade, not because of the slashers, of the gore, of the horror of killing. It's the psychological terror that occurs as they are stranded. The movie shows themes of loneliness, of being alone, of being stranded without anybody else, when it does that impeccably, and that's why it's my number 2 pick. Why this didn't get number 1? Well, we'll see. My number 1 pick goes to Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Celine Sciamma. I think that's how you pronounce it. This movie is set in France in the 1770s, and it's about a painter who is commissioned to do a wedding portrait of a woman who does not want to be married to the man she is set to be married to. Because of this, she will not pose for the portrait, and the painter must paint her in secret without her knowing. So she observes her day to day, and by doing this, these two characters create a chemistry that is so enthralling to see on the big screen. The cinematography is beautiful. It is shot impeccably. It's shot beautifully. The colors pop, and it's so amazing. It is amazingly acted. The two actors, Adele and Naomi, I think that's how you pronounce them, they play off of each other perfectly well. What I think this movie does so well, and what gets it this number 1 spot, is the use of refrain and tension. This movie holds back. There's silence throughout the whole film. Sometimes you can only hear the crackle of a fire or the waves crashing. The use of music is only so scarce. When they do use it, it is brought with such an emotional backing that you see pain and the torture in the characters when they come. The romantic tension is amazing in this film. I think this movie does very well in showing the female perspective. This director is very well known for doing that. There are no men in this film, and by doing that, we allowed to see the female gaze on each other. And the setting plays so well into the film, because without the setting, this film would not become so jarring and so heartbreaking without it. The message behind this movie is so enthralling. The message behind this movie is so powerful and so moving. I was left hyperventilating with a lump in my throat at the end of it. The final scene is so tear-grabbing and so emotional that you just can't take your eyes off of it. This movie does nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong about this movie. This movie does everything so well. Most of all, it tells an important and amazing story, and that's why it's number 1 on my list. So that's my top 10 movies of 2019. Do you guys agree or disagree? Would you guys rank them differently? What movies did I not include that you would have included? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to talk to you guys. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. My next video will be a review and analysis of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. And then after that, I'm probably going to come back to Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you then.